Buffone 55 is recorded live and intended for all audiences. This is the Bears Barroom Radio Network, and we're brought to you by the Verdoliak Law Group, fighting insurance companies since 1963, and BetChicago.com, your source for all of Chicago's sports and betting news.
Buffone. A certain magic will always linger with the very name. It speaks of courage and fervor and the world's most brutal game. 55, worn by Doug Buffone, a Chicago Bear through and through. He demanded excellence of himself and anyone wearing navy blue.
You tell me what's going on. This is moronic. We're going to get our whipped all the way down the line. I want somebody to get kicked in the and get out there and play. You're getting paid to play this game and play it right. I don't mind you getting beat. I got my whipped many times, but I tell you, I took somebody down with me. You are a professional team. Act like one, for God's sakes.
Football fans, this is Buffone 55. The John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55, the fastest-paced Chicago Bears football podcast available. I'm your host, John Buffone. Hey, we're coming off a win, folks. Always feels much nicer that way. But don't worry, barflies. I'm still fired up and ready to roll. With me, as always, is my sidekick and trusty show producer, BearsGrl. BG, the Bears won, and we're back in first place. Also, it's Halloween, so happy Halloween, BearsGrl. Are you ready to cross that Canadian border and head on over to Buffalo for this Sunday's game?
I am absolutely ready to head over to Buffalo. I'm also planning my escape from Buffalo really quickly as soon as the game is done, John. And happy Halloween. I'm dressed up. Are you?
Just dressed up as a stud. But I guess it's supposed to be a costume, so it is what it is. But well, I digress. We'll push that off to a different segment. But joining us tonight are some Bills analysts. They are the host of the Buffalo Bills podcast, the Rockpile Report. Drew Gier. Oh my God, it's Gier. I said Gier. I said I wouldn't do it, and I did it. I'm so sorry, Drew. Drew Gier and Chris Krueger. Thanks for being on the Buffone 55 tonight. How you guys doing?
Not too bad, and it is okay because you know what? People have been butchering my last name ever since I played Pee Wee football. I've heard Gier. I've heard Gier. I mean, I've heard every pronunciation that you can come up with out of 4 letters. Gier.
Man, and
you're perfectly fine.
We're just going to add my name to the list, guys. So I appreciate you guys being on. I want to take a look at how you think this Bears-Bills matchup is going to go. If you think the Bills stand a chance against the Bears after that bitter loss to the Patriots on Monday night, I want to start with the quarterback, because as we know, everything starts with the quarterback position in the NFL. Unfortunately, in Buffalo, that's some bad news because Josh Allen's going to miss another game with an elbow injury. Derek Anderson's he's in concussion protocol. That leaves second-year quarterback Nate Peterman. Sorry, I said his name with a laugh. I didn't mean to be disrespectful there, but he had started 3 games since Buffalo selected him in the 5th round of the 2017 draft. The numbers aren't good. Thrown 7 interceptions in those games, 16.8 passer rating. What can you guys tell us about Peterman, and where's the confidence level among the Bills organization with him?
The confidence level? Did you just use that and Nathan Peterman in the same sentence? Are you crazy?
I'm trying to be nice here.
Here's what you don't have to be. It's fine. I'm a realist. I've been a Bills fan my entire life, and I'm used to this. Nathan Peterman right now. The fan base, the coaching staff, I mean, the confidence level is not high. That's signified by the fact that they pulled Nathan Peterman halfway through the first game. That's as far as he made it. And they were content not to let him see the field again until these injury issues flared up. It took 2 injuries to get him back on the field. That in and of itself should tell you everything you need to know about Nathan Peterman. As far as him technically and mechanically, Nathan Peterman is a quarterback who does his best. He does his best work when he's allowed only 1 read, maybe a check down, and then he has to take off. When you keep the offense simple and you just tell him, look, here's where your throw is going to be, and if it's egregiously not there, if you look and there's a safety standing to where you know you're supposed to release the ball, get out of dodge. If you ask him to stand in the pocket, I think the worst thing about him is that I think the quote, I read it on Deadspin about him, and it made me laugh after the Ravens game. And then after he came into the Houston game, the quote was, if Nathan Peterman stared down wide receivers on the street the way he stares them down on the field, he's liable to have more restraining orders than he already has interceptions. That's the type of quarterback you're dealing with. But just when it comes to the nuances of football, he's just not as technically sound, especially in terms of his field vision. He doesn't trust what he sees, so he stares too long, and it always gets him into trouble.
I've got more confidence this Sunday in Matt Barkley.
Hey, Bears fans know a lot about Matt Barkley, and to be honest, that was kind of a follow-up question. Would there be much of a drop-off at this point if a cold Matt Barkley came in and just started, maybe throwing the ball around, maybe he hands the ball off, maybe he just makes plays up as he goes along? Is that much of a drop-off?
Well, I think one of the problems you're seeing is a cold Matt Barkley who can read at least half of the field and make decisions under duress would be better than what we've seen so far as Bills fans out of Nathan Peterman. In the preseason, he looked really good, which is why he won the starting nod at the beginning of the season. But that was, again, under a set of circumstances where the plays he was being asked to execute consisted of one read, a check down, and then use your mobility to try to get out of trouble. And that was it. And so when they put him in at the beginning of the season, their ask of him suddenly became, we're going to give you the playbook. We want you to look off wide receivers. We want you to see the whole field and utilize it. And it blew up in everyone's face, which is what led to them pulling him after just one half of football, because they realized this guy doesn't give us a chance to win. Now, because of their I don't know what it is. I don't know what the reversion to getting true veteran talent on this roster. I mean, I get it. A.J. McCarron was worth a 5th-round pick. You saw it and got greedy and decided that you'd plan for the future. But you needed to bring in somebody better than Nathan Peterman. And now he's here, and now he's starting for us, and they're going to rue the day they made that decision. Barkley would not be that much of a drop-off cold, even not knowing the playbook, if he can read more than half a field. I'm going to trust you guys to tell me whether he can or not.
A just glamorous review of Nate Peterman go for Bears fans. I'm sure they love hearing everything you just said. I want to talk about I want to say on the Bills offense, the team as a whole, 2-6. This is the worst start for them since 2010. They've been outscored by 113 points so far this year. Besides the obvious problems at quarterback, where else is this offense faltering? Is there any bright spots that's actually working for them right now?
What else is faltering? How much time do you have? I mean, I could the rest of your podcast if that's your question. Ultimately, you're talking about an offense that is trending towards being. We're not there yet, but we're trending towards being the worst offense to be fielded by an NFL football team in the modern era. Wow. We're last in most critical statistics. I mean, total yards per play, passing yards per game, pass average, percentage of passes intercepted. We are last in the NFL right now. That should tell you where everything's faltering, and a lot of it starts at the quarterback position, but not all of it's the quarterback's fault. When you look at the wide receiver position, we don't have any single wide receiver who can generate natural separation on their own. Now, you guys might know something about this because you had Alshon Jeffrey, who was a very good wide receiver, but outside of him, a lot of your wide receiver groups struggled.
Right.
Coming into this season, you go out and you get an Allen Robinson, you get a Taylor Gabriel, different skill sets, but guys who can find ways to get open. We, on the flip side of that, don't really have anyone that generates that kind of just separation or displays that kind of open field catching ability. You would think that a guy, and I think the person I'm most critical of in that position group would be Kelvin Benjamin. Guy was a former first-round draft pick for the Carolina Panthers. He came here and started the season as our de facto number 1 wide receiver. So it's depressing to see that he gives the least amount of effort of anybody on the field. He's big enough to just by himself, if you threw him jump balls, he could be more productive than he is. He just doesn't put anything in. So with that said, you've got a bad group of quarterbacks throwing to a bad group of wide receivers. Now, this past Monday, I said, sitting in my seats at the Patriots game, I've never seen an offense for the Bills face more single high safety sets than I did that team on Monday night. And it equated to us, even with LaShawn McCoy, only getting 46 yards rushing on the night. Teams know they don't have to respect us throwing the ball. And I think that those two position groups, the quarterback and wide receivers, just forget. I mean, I could spend an hour on the offensive line problems, but those two position groups have combined to make our offense so one-dimensional that it's simple for opposing defenses to take away.
If this team gets a top 10 pick, I mean, it's not a great draft class coming up for wide receivers, but is that something they have to address in the first round, or what do they do if they have a high pick this year?
I wouldn't say. I look at the trend of first-round wide receivers, and I'm
not good.
I look at that and I say, you know what? Let's shy away from that, because you look at the Mike Williams out for the Chargers, and the first-round draft pick for the Titans,
Corey Davis.
Again, top 10 picks at wide receiver, who are probably third on their team in receptions. I'm sorry, but me personally, I don't want that on my roster.
You're going to want to go offensive line in the draft to protect Josh Allen.
You build an offensive line and you start from there and you build from the quarterback out, which is what they've started by getting their future quarterback. But they went about building this roster. I mean, we're just subpar in talent across the board. My producer Chris here made an analogy to me on Monday night as I was just ranting about how bad our football team was. That what happened to our offensive coordinator is the equivalent of me hiring you. Okay, I come to you and I say, you know what? Come over to my house and make chocolate chip cookies. And you say, okay, that sounds like a good idea. I'm pretty good at that. You show up and I hand you a bag of chocolate chips and say, okay, here you go. And you ask me, well, where's the flour? Where's the sugar? Well, I don't have any of that. Oh, there's none of that here, but here's some chocolate chips. I expect you to make me cookies. That's what this offense has been this season. You know, we have one or two pieces out of 11 that it requires to make a successful offense, and right now we're just struggling to even tread water.
Well, let's talk about something a little more positive. Let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they had a pretty good outing Monday night against the Patriots, and they have a pretty good rookie linebacker, Tremaine Edmunds, well known in the bar room here. He was a favorite in some of our draft analysts, myself included. I love the kid. But is it safe to say he's had kind of an uneven season? Some of the stuff coming out of Pro Football Focus reveals he's allowed 11 receptions on 13 targets for over 100 yards, giving up about 11.7 yards after the catch. Can you guys kind of evaluate his play, because this is the guy we talked about a lot in the offseason. From your perspective, how's he doing?
Well, here's what I'll say about Tremaine Edmunds. The guy is the type of linebacker who you see it when he's running around the field. The guy's an athletic freak. That being said, a name you're familiar with, Roquan Smith. I am a huge SEC football fan when it comes to college football. Roll Tide. So with that said, I'm very familiar with Roquan Smith. There's a reason that you guys took him instead of Tremaine Edmunds. Reason being, even though he's not the athletic specimen and he doesn't have the athletic upside that Tremaine Edmunds has, he has a better understanding of the nuances of football already. So his floor, as far as football intelligence goes, is already higher. Now, that being said, Tremaine Edmunds is a 19-year-old kid who's 6'5". You know, he's what? Chris, he's 19, 6'5", 250-something pounds, who's athletic enough to cover slot receivers. So he's got the physical talent, but the problem has been he's relied on that for so long through college that we knew there was going to be kind of a learning curve for him, and we've seen every bit of it. At the beginning of the season, he missed a lot of gaps in the running game. And in coverage, he was lost, and teams picked on him for it. I mean, one of the
Colts game.
We always talk about this. Statistics can sometimes lie. When you look at the games against Baltimore and the games against the Chargers we had to start the season, it looks like they torched us when you just look at the scoreboard. When you look and you say, "Oh, they must have thrown for hundreds of yards all over these guys and all over the field." Well, in reality, those offenses avoided our safeties, they avoided our cornerbacks, and instead, I think in the Baltimore game, there was only 3 passes that were attempted more than 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. And in the Chargers game, there was only 1 more than 15 yards from the line of scrimmage. What they did was they focused their attack on passing to running backs and tight ends in front of our linebackers and making guys like Tremaine Edmunds and Matt Milano try to tackle them in space, relying on the fact that their youth would lead them to being susceptible to giving up yards after the catch. So when you talk about Tremaine Edmunds' yards allowed, I absolutely believe he's let up over 100 because he's still learning the nuances of coverage. That being said, he's had some games where he's been a dynamic force. You can see it in the running game. He's figured out that aspect of football, and he's figured out how to come on delayed blitzes. So the last thing, which I think is the hardest for any linebacker, is to figure out how to be adequate in the passing game. And he's getting there. But after, obviously going up against Tom Brady on Monday, that's a hard ask for any linebacker. But he posted one of the lowest grades, Pro Football Focus coverage grades of the week of any linebacker to set foot on a football field. He's still got some work to do in that department, which makes him something of a liability.
He's in concussion protocol right now. Is he going to be able to play against the Bears?
It's still up in the air. My assumption would be yes, but I don't know that for sure yet. And if he's out, God save the Queen.
This should be an interesting one. Tell me, I want to stick on this defense. Help us understand how the Bills' defense can give up 4 touchdowns to Andrew Luck one week and then the following week hold Tom Brady to 0. What's the identity of this defense, or is it a scheme thing, or is it just inconsistency? What happens? What happens when you see something like that?
Well, honestly, if you go back to it once again, you're talking about 4 touchdowns. Here's what happens. Andrew Luck throws 4 touchdowns, but he only throws for 154 yards. Watching that game, what they did was they moved a lot of their wide receivers around to get them specifically matched up against their linebackers. Chris, you were sitting there in the living room. When I walked in, all I did was walk in with a beer in my hand. I looked at the TV, and I said, oh, Jesus, they just motioned T.Y. Hilton over into the slots that Matt Milano has to slide over and cover him. You've got a linebacker covering T.Y. Hilton. Sure enough, the next pass was a 19-yard gain. Teams have figured out that if there's a weak link to pick on in the passing game, it really is the linebacking core. But Matt Milano has kind of found his footing in that regard. So this week, the Patriots tried that same tact, and our defense gave up yardage underneath, but didn't let them find the end zone. Whereas the Colts, the week before, used their running backs a lot in the passing game. And because of that, our safeties were so busy patrolling the flats, making sure nothing got outside our cornerbacks, that linebackers were able to give up passes to guys like T.Y. Hilton for touchdowns.
Yeah, and I guess you look at it, picking on that linebacking core, that might be something that the Bears look to do. Hey, BearsGrl, I want to throw it over to you guys. Looks like we might have a question about Terrell Pryor in the chat room. Am I seeing that right?
You are seeing that right. Harp4803 has a double-pronged question for you guys. His first question is, will newly signed wide receiver Terrell Pryor play for the Bills? And he also played quarterback at Ohio State, so does he have a possible new role?
Oh, man, this is something that's been floating around Twitter for Bills fans for ever since the signing. Hey, doesn't he immediately become the best quarterback on the roster? And it's one of those things that makes you just facepalm. Just facepalm. The fact that we even have to have that discussion. I genuinely believe that Terrell Pryor, his main focus here is going to be wide receiver. He's going to be put out there. I just don't know if it happens now. I mean, it's when we traded for Kelvin Benjamin last year, we were entering a stretch of, must-win games, important games. It was the starter. His first game in a Bills uniform last year after they traded for him was a primetime football game against the Jets. It's a divisional game. It's the first time he played them all season, and it's on the road. He played 3 snaps that game. He dressed. He played 3 snaps simply because he didn't know the playbook. Now, last year's wide receiver core was a little more nuanced than this year's. They were a little more effective. So I don't know how that plays into this. But I would say, knowing what I know about this team, knowing what I know about what they're trying to achieve this season, I just don't. Given the fact that Peterman is the quarterback, so no matter who you throw out there at wide receiver, it's subjective.
Well, Ray McLeod has been in the doghouse.
Yeah.
So that's somebody that might not play, which frees up another wide receiver spot or however many you're going to dress. Whether it's 4, 5, 6 guys.
I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised if he plays.
It is entirely possible, considering that on Monday Night Football, your number 1 wide receiver got called out by Booger McFarland, okay, who is an overweight guy himself, got called out he said, Kelvin Benjamin, that boy is one Popeye's biscuit away from being a tight end. Given that, and that's an analyst talking about your number one wide receiver. Who knows? Maybe they do just decide to roll him out there because they figure, what's the worst that could happen? He can't underperform the rest of these guys.
At least he can scramble a little bit, and I mean, he's not going to throw. He couldn't possibly throw more picks than Peterman does. So at least it'd be fun to watch. At least.
I mean, last week they did run a bunch of Wildcats, so if nothing else, maybe that's what they put him in for. I don't know.
I want to talk about the coaching staff over in Buffalo. Head coach Sean McDermott, much like Matt Nagy, part of that Andy Reid coaching tree. What are some of his characteristics as a head coach, and what's the general sentiment in Buffalo about his performance? Is it a more of a wait and see, have faith, trust the process thing, or, man, this guy's running us into the ground kind of thing?
We tend to go back and forth about that. So, and it depends on how many beers I've had and how the team is doing that given Sunday. I try my best to be a pragmatic fan, but I'm a fan at heart. You know, I'm not a media guy. I have a job that pays me way more than that ever could. So I do what I do because I enjoy it, because I love just the game of football and I love this football team. So that being said, that can lead me to being a manic fan sometimes. And obviously I see Twitter. I see what goes out on Facebook. There's a feeling amongst this fan base that people forget that we broke a 17-year playoff drought last year. You would think that that might be enough to placate fans. And I honestly believe that might have tricked the GM and the coach into thinking that fans would take that playoff appearance and hold on to it through a year where they purposely fielded one of the worst offenses that money could buy. So with that said, I really do think that there is a contingent. I mean, we're split into factions. There's a contingent of Bills fans who understands, and I try to be a part of this, who understands that this is the growing pains you have to go through when you've been a mediocre to bad football team for so long. You have to go through these in order to get to good. Bears fans can probably
we relate
some of that, you know? So with that said, there's a whole other contingent of Bills fans, and there's a lot of them, who are starting to already lose faith in what they dub as the quote-unquote the process. You know, they see this, and even in a press conference this week, Sean McDermott was flat out said, look, I understand the fan base is frustrated, but this is the GM and I have a vision, and this is part of it. So at least they're not patronizing us as fans anymore. They're admitting the fact that our struggles are by design. That gives me at least a little bit of confidence going forward. But there is a contingent of Bills fans that are really starting to doubt that there is a plan in place. And that's the coaching staff's fault, both by the way they've built the roster and the way they've handled their rookie quarterback. I mean, if you were going into a season where you thought you were going to be terrible, you wouldn't play your rookie quarterback knowing that you've given him no help. But we did that right out of the chute. So I guess I actually have a question for you guys. When it comes to your rookie quarterback situation last season, you had Mike Glennon, and then you decided that Mitch Trubisky needed his time. Was it kind of this same sort of thing where you looked at the other options on the roster and the coaching staff said, hey, I have to do better than this?
Well, I think it came down to the fact that Mike Glennon was so bad, and he was supposed to be a guy who was supposed to just be the bridge guy who they thought maybe could play the entire year. They were pretty confident in his abilities to be an at least adequate quarterback and not in a complete dumpster fire that he was. So I think when they got 4 or 5 games in, they realized this guy's not going to win even 2 games for us. He's not going to win 3 games for us. And I think John Fox and the rest of the coaching staff said, hey, we're probably on our way out, and if we're hanging on by a thread, we better put the rookie in to see what we got, because at that point it was a rabid atmosphere in Chicago. The fan base was absolutely, I mean, they were holding up the Firefox symbol for an Internet Explorer type thing in the stands. We had our own Firefox campaign here at the bar room. So it came down to the fact where you got to put them in, because if you don't, you're gonna get run out of town before the season's over. And basically that just bought Fox and friends the rest of the season to just kind of hang out and have Trubisky hand the ball off 25 times a game. But but they also felt confident in their offensive line to be able to protect him as well. So I think that there was some underlying aspects of that. They didn't have much wide receiver help, but then again, they don't throw the Dow Loggins and John Fox don't throw to wide receivers, so they saw that as a plus. So I there are similar situations. However, perhaps the Bills would have been better off not throwing Allen to the Wolves so quickly.
Thank you. And that's what's driven a lot of our fan angst, is just, why are you doing the things you're doing? Because there's some of the decisions you look at and you can see, hey, you guys are trying to put us in a position. I get it. You shed contracts. We led the NFL with $50 million in dead money. So that's $50 million. That could be 5 players who are helping this football team who aren't. So with that, you kind of have an understanding of, I get what you did here. But at the same time, you look at it and say, okay, then why would you throw your rookie, who's supposed to be the future of this franchise, into this? Do you really have a plan? Or are you just grasping at straws everywhere around you to try to piecemeal something together? And so it's been a point of contention amongst the Bills fans.
I can imagine, and I mean, we always go to the old adage that if you keep listening to the people sitting in the stands, soon enough you're going to be sitting beside them, and you don't want to keep talking, you don't want to keep listening to everybody outside of it. Have a plan, stick to it, and if it goes down, it goes down. But at least it was a plan and not just a bunch of things going in 1,000 different directions. Hey, before we get these guys' prediction on the game, BearsGrl, do we have any more action in the chat room?
I do. I've got 2 more questions for our guest tonight. Ace Daniels is in the house, and he wants to know who's a Bills player that the Bears fans might not know, but should watch out for on Sunday.
I would go with Matt Milano.
Oh, I was about to say Chris up top.
Matt Milano.
Matt Milano. Matt Milano is a guy who, when he was drafted in the 5th round, Chris,
you hated him.
What kind of a glowing endorsement did I give that guy?
You hated him.
I think I used it in the terms that it was a bust pick, that he was a bum.
A wasted pick.
A wasted pick. The guy is a 5th round draft pick out of Boston College. He's really come on in year 2. When you figure our linebacker core has done some great things, and in the games that we've won, our linebacker core have been a force for us. He's a bigger part of that than rookie Trey Edmunds. And you guys know what a freak he is and what his talent level could be. Matt Milano, I mean, he's against the Patriots. He killed it. You're talking about Tom Brady. He targeted him 7 times and he only gave up 2 passes. And for 14 yards. And he's everywhere. He's won AFC Defensive Player of the Week. He's just week after week after week, we watch this kid get better right in front of us. And as a 5th round pick, he seems like a steal. And the thing with him that I think a lot of people, and I myself didn't realize, is that being a former safety, a player you guys are probably familiar with, Brian Urlacher.
Yeah, a little bit.
Out of New Mexico, right? So you look at this guy. I'm not saying he's Brian Urlacher, but what I'm saying is when you play safety in college, you have a better understanding of how to play things from a passing perspective. And then with some experience playing linebacker, you also, if you're good, you figure out how run fits work, how to play up near the line of scrimmage, how to pressure when you need to on blitzes, how to shoot gaps and get into the backfield for tackles for loss. He's done all of this in a year and a half's worth of time actually being a starter for this defense. He is probably the motor that makes our front 7 run, because our defensive line does such a good job of keeping them clean, but they're dependent on our linebackers making plays behind him. Matt Milano is a guy who doesn't get a ton of press, but you watch the game on Sunday, and you're going to see that he's everywhere making plays.
That's a guy we're going to keep our eye on then. Could be a disruptor for the Bears offense. BG, anything else from the chat room?
Last question for you guys is, Matt Barkley was recently signed as a backup quarterback, and we know him well in Chicago. Would you rather see Pryor as your backup or Barkley?
That is tough, because when you've got Matt Barkley back there, you at least have somebody who's taken some dropbacks and played at least quarters of seasons, thirds of seasons. Maybe has a little bit of understanding how a pro-style offense is supposed to work. On the flip side of that, you've got Terrell Pryor, who, as an athlete, works with our offensive line since they love to just hemorrhage pressure. Your defensive line, I'm assuming I know last week you guys said out Khalil Mack. Even if Khalil Mack does not play this week, I still see our offensive line being under fire, which means that if you're trying to go apples to apples between the two of them, Terrell Pryor actually presents a much more athletic upside, sort of like Tyrod Taylor did against all of the quarterbacks that he had to compete with over his 3 years here in Buffalo. He'd actually, in my opinion, make a better fit for this game because he could at least get out in space when our offensive line inevitably folds like a house of cards and lets the pressure into the back. He can at least get out in space and do something.
Yeah, I don't want to see Pryor with the ball because he can run to the outside, potentially make some plays. I don't want him with the ball. Give it to Matt Barkley. Give it to Nate Peterman. We all want to see Nate Peterman. Give the people what they want. More Peterman, guys. Before I get you out of here, I need a prediction out of you. Now, I want you guys to know only one analyst that we've brought on here so far has ever picked the team that they cover or has actually ever picked the Bears to beat the team they cover, and that was at the Miami game, and the Bears blew it. So are you guys going to put the same hex on us by picking the Bears to beat the Bills this week?
Yeah, it's going to be the Bears 17-10.
Oh, woof.
10? What?
10? Yeah.
Statistically, the Bears are a better defense than the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots are near the bottom of the league in most important statistics. You're putting Nathan Peterman under center, who is a quarterback who likes to throw the ball to opposing teams the way firemen throw candy to children at a parade. Okay? With that said, I predict a similar score as to what happened on Monday night. I'm going to say it's going to fall somewhere in the range of 20-25 to 6. I see 2 field goals being scored. I do not see our offense getting into the end zone.
Yeah, but I didn't say that. I didn't tell you that it was going to be an offensive touchdown.
Oh, jeez.
Could be special teams, defense. I would put those two. I would put those two units before offense of getting a touchdown.
What a fun caveat there. Hey, before we cut you guys loose, let us know how we can listen to your stuff and check out your stuff on social media. You guys do a great job.
Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at Rockpile Report, rockpilereport.podbean.com, where you can find our podcast, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, Spotify. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can find the Rockpile Report.
Our barflies know all about all of those things, so they'll make sure to check that out. Hey, guys, thank you so much for being on Buffone 55. We hope to talk to you sometime down the road.
Absolutely.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
BearsGrl, it's halftime. You know what that means.
That means we've got some questions for you. But before we get to those 55-second questions, Johns, I got to ask you about your thoughts on the injury that Kyle Long suffered on Sunday in those final minutes of the game. I know you were watching and also heard the scream that Kyle let out. Completely devastating. So far, what we're hearing out of Hallis Hall is that he's got a tendon injury in his right foot. He's in a walking boot and is, quote, frustrated with this tough setback. They're deciding whether to put him on injured reserve, and Matt Nagy said earlier today that he is, quote, week to week. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it sucks. It's because this is a guy, everything was humming. The offensive line seemed like they had pretty good chemistry. They were gelling. They were cohesive, any other adjective you want to use there. But I also think that there's enough pieces there that they can step up and fill the gap. They're not going to be as good. They're not going to be as solid as they were with Kyle Long in there, obviously. But I think that I think Cush will be back this week. They can maybe they have Daniels do something out of the ordinary. Maybe he's going to have to play a little bit more probably. I don't love it, but I think that there's some opportunity there for them to still play well. This was a good offensive line, and they lost a good lineman, and that's not good. But I think that they still have the horses in the barn to kind of to take care of it. I don't think it's going to be catastrophic, but obviously it's a big loss.
Absolutely, and everyone here at the bar room, and we know all our barflies are sending Kyle get well soon wishes. And we miss him. So let's remind our listeners how this part of the show works. I'm going to ask you 5 questions about our beloved Chicago Bears, and you're going to have all but 55 seconds to respond. The reason you've picked 55 seconds is as a tribute to your uncle, Doug Buffone, who wore number 55 during his 15 seasons with the Bears. At the end of 55 seconds, you're going to hear a whistle, at which time you can start to wrap up your response. John, are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. John, are you disappointed the Bears did not make a trade before the deadline yesterday? Who would you like to have seen the Bears either go after or trade from our roster? You've got 55 seconds. Go.
I'm not disappointed at all, to be honest with you. Look at the pieces they got moved yesterday. Demaryius Thomas and Golden Tate. The Bears don't need receivers. That's the first time I've been able to say that in a long time. Dante Fowler, he would have been nice, but multiple picks for a rental? Nah, I'll leave that up to the Rams. And in case you missed it, the Bears don't have a ton of draft capital as it is. Clinton Dix, sure, that would have been cool, but there's no way in hell the Packers are trading him to the Bears. If anything, the Bears won the day by seeing Clinton Dix, Ty Montgomery, and Golden Tate all leave the division, and they didn't have to give up anything for that. Listen, I saw Bears fans on Twitter yesterday asking Ryan Pace when he was going to make a move, and they were getting frustrated. And I responded by saying, hey, they made their move in September. Remember then when they acquired the best defensive player on the planet? It wasn't that long ago. And guess what? They got him before the season started. So there isn't going to be the transition phase that a lot of these other guys are going to have to go through. I said this last week. This isn't Madden. This isn't Major League Baseball where you can plug and play guys. Mid-season acquisitions are tough. And I'm fine with the first place Chicago Bears not going out and shaking things up and maybe messing up any chemistry they may have built up halfway through the season.
I completely agree with you, as do your chat room listeners. And Harp4803 is saying the NFC North got weaker with the trades that happened on Tuesday. Let's move on to question number 2. With the upcoming Bills game marking the halfway point of the season, use the next 55 seconds to give us 3 players on the Bears offense that you think have played the best football in the first half of the 2018 season. Your 55 seconds start now.
Well, I'm starting with Mitch Trubisky. Listen, people were writing this guy off last year leading up to the season, and some still don't have any faith in him. But the fact of the matter is he's putting up Pro Bowl-type numbers right now. 1,800 yards passing, 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. By the way, he's rushed for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's becoming what the Bears hoped he would turn into, and I really think he's only going to get better. Number 2, Tariq Cohen. If the hiring of Matt Nagy has positively impacted anyone as much as Trubisky, it's Cohen. He's being used as everything, a running back, a receiver, a punt returner. This guy is nothing short of electric, and every time he touches the ball, you believe it could maybe go to the house. It kind of has that Devin Hester type feel to it, dare I say. And number 3, Taylor Gabriel. Everyone was so high on the Allen Robinson signing, but it's Gabriel that leads the team in receptions with 34, and he has that joystick ability to blow the top off of a defense. Imagine trying to keep up with Cohen and Gabriel at the same time. It's incredible to have both of these guys on the field. And that was another great signing by Pace because he's here for 4 years. He's not a one-year wonder that goes off and plays somewhere else. This guy's locked in. So those are the 3 guys I got.
I also agree with you. And you know who else agrees with you? Mike North, because he is now on Team Trubisky. If you didn't see that video, check out at North to North.
Took long enough.
He is all about Trubisky now. I know, week 8, right?
Yeah.
Let's move on to question number 3. The logical follow-up question for you is to ask about our top defensive players, but I'm going to save that for next week. But I will stay with the Bears defense. The Bills, as we know, and as we've heard from our guests, have a terrible offense with just 87 points this year, barely 10 per game. What are the keys to Vic Fangio's defense keeping the Bills to 10 or less points? Wake up, Vic. The clock starts now.
I think it's pretty simple. It's likely they're going to line up against Nate Peterman, 13 and 32 this year for 100 yards, a touchdown, and 4 interceptions. Go after that guy. If he gets benched or knocked out of the game, our old buddy Matt Barkley goes in. Just a reminder, Matt Barkley once threw 54 passes in a game for the Bears, and can you believe they lost? That kind of makes you appreciate 2018 a little bit more, but I digress. You got to put everybody up at the line and make Nate Peterman make accurate throws all day under pressure. No soft coverage. Don't allow any of those stupid wide receiver screens. If the Bears don't cause at least 2 turnovers, it's a shame. I watched Derek Anderson flail around like a boated trout last week against New England, and that's what the Bills coaching staff thought was a better option than Nathan Peterman. So make him throw the ball, stack the box, and make sure Shady McCoy doesn't get comfortable. I really look for them to try to get a lot of screens to McCoy to take pressure off of Peterman. So sniff those out early and get them in long yardage situations. There is absolutely no excuse for the Bears to lose to Nate Peterman. Nobody wants to be the guy that loses to Nate Peterman. Don't do it this week.
After the disappointing loss to the Dolphins and Brock Osweiler, I'm hoping no one's getting cocky about Nate Peterman playing this Sunday. Number 4, John, you talked about the bad decisions, or maybe the good decisions, that Ryan Pace was making. But let's talk about the ones that Barflies and Bears fans are talking about Matt Nagy making. Fans have disagreed with many of them, and many are wondering why Mike Burton is still even on this roster. In the next 55 seconds, give us your list of Matt Nagy's decisions you'd like to see him rethink. Go.
All right, I can't think of a lot of individual decisions, but sometimes we do see a little bit too much of Andy Reid and Matt Nagy. The knock on Andy Reid has always been his tendency to not understand game situations, clock management, and getting away from what's working. So sometimes we do see opportunities where it's 3rd and short and we don't see Jordan Howard in the game, or the run game is humming and on the next drive we see 3 straight passes and the defense gets a 2-minute break. And maybe at the end of the Miami game they could have done a lot more to get Cody Parkey a closer field goal attempt, but I don't want to bash Coach Nagy too much. There have been some questionable calls, but I think you can say that about 90% of the coaches out there. At the end of the day, put Nagy against John Fox. Put him against Mark Trestman. Then look at other teams like Green Bay where you have arguably the best quarterback in the league and his coach can't seem to do anything with him. Look at Cleveland where they just fired basically everybody and they're leaving their rookie quarterback out to dry. The Bears have their coach. Much like Mitch Trubisky, I think he's going to get much better as time goes on. He's going to progress, and some of these things are going to tighten up. Will some of these things drive me crazy this year? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, the Bears are pretty lucky to have this guy.
I am actually thrilled with Nagy. I'm not thrilled with all of his decisions, but I am thrilled with the decision to lose the visor and move to an actual hat. That is something I will stand behind. Question number 5. I want all barflies to get close and listen to this one because we're eagerly awaiting your motivational speeches. But this week, we've got a slightly different scenario. Jordan Howard has finally given 20 carries last week, but there's no sense that he's no longer the feature back in this offense. And as we've seen, there's signs of frustration. I want you, John, to talk to Jordan one-on-one. Whatever you think he needs to hear, share it with him here. I've stopped the clock so you can give him all the time you need. And we're going to even post this piece on Twitter in the hopes that he hears your message before Sunday's game.
I'm going to change the tone up a little bit for this one. So I walk into the locker room, I see Jordan Howard. Jordan, J-How, Joho, how you doing, buddy? Listen, I know you might be a little curious as to why we aren't feeding you as much as you're used to. I get it. But you have to believe me when I say it's not you. It's the team. Last year, I know you were the focus and your fantasy owners loved you and you were making a real name for yourself. But look around you, man. Look at the excitement. We have a budding quarterback, a new age coach, receivers that shouldn't be bagging groceries, and a complimentary running back that takes the load off of your shoulders. Listen to me, Jordan. Your style of running is aggressive, it's angry, and it's effective, but that can't last forever. But if we have the people around you to keep your legs fresh, you're going to play better, and you're going to play longer. You are a vital piece of this offense, and we need you. And we can use you without running you into the ground, and you aren't running off the field with your arms barely attached to your body, and your knees feel like ticking time bombs. You're on a winning team now, J Money, and there are going to be some times where we lean on you, and there's going to be some times where something else is working. But we need everybody rowing in the same direction, and you have a real opportunity here to be a part of something special. Championship teams have multiple stars, and we need you to be one of ours. Time to shine, buddy. Let's go. With that being said, it's time to roll right into my prediction for this weekend's game. This has all the looks to a Bears letdown game. It just builds up because the Bears should kill the Bills, but it has all the feeling of the Bears are going to fall apart early in the game. But I think it's going to be dangerously closer than it needs to be, but I think the Bears cause some turnovers. I think they pull away in the fourth quarter. The Bears will beat the Bills 23-13. And before we go, just remember this episode of Buffone 55 will be on your podcast stream first thing Thursday morning. Make sure you share it with your friends and give us a review on any of the delivery systems you get your podcast from. We are on all of them: iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Sears Catalog, Western Union, you name it. All you have to do is search for Bears Barroom Radio Network, and we're going to pop up. BearsGrl, before we get out of here, go ahead and pop that swag shop real quick.
So our swag shop is still booming, and there are new designs and new items that will be showing up in the next couple of weeks. And I will be wearing some of that swag at the game this Sunday because I will be in Buffalo. I am crossing the border. Hopefully they'll let me across and attending the game. So if any of our barflies are listening and going to be there, let me know, and we will meet up.
All right, have a great time out there, BG. Make sure you join us back here on MixLR tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central for Trey Busey's Let's Talk It Out, the Barroom's public service show. You got to check this show out. It's one of a kind. It's a really great show. And on Friday, the Mike North Advantage is at 9 a.m. Central Time. Can't make it? We'll catch the podcast version, and that will do it for us. BG, we made it through another one. You doing all right?
I am, but now it's time for me to go have candy because it's Halloween, John.
Yeah, I'm going to go have a kale salad or something cool like that. But that'll do it for us. Hopefully when we come back next week, the Bears will be a couple games over 500. For BG, I'm John Buffone. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bear down.